be a little bit behind on lecture this semester. Don't worry, I'll take care of it. It'll all get in. I've got time built in and everything. But I wanted to give time to be able to do that today. So to kind of kick off our discussion, and I have questions from the web students here as well. They've submitted their questions so that way we can take into consideration their thoughts. How many people watched the Netflix documentary? Wow. Okay, so we're at probably 70% of the class Netflix. How many people watched Hulu? Okay. Did anybody not watch either one? It's okay.
I thought we weren't supposed to since we did you send out an announcement?
Uh-huh.
You did?
Yes, it's okay. So, and then did anybody read an article or explore or learn from that perspective? You said that you ended up like doing like a 3-day dive, right?
Exploration about what happened.
You got super excited about all of this. How in the world? Okay, that helps me to kind of get where we're starting from. So, thoughts, feelings. What were your initial takeaways after you finished it?
My first takeaway was, and obviously as an outsider, it's really easy to say this, and as somebody who's involved with it, I'm sure it wasn't as easy, obviously, to see the big picture, but I was just so shocked how everybody who was involved could just be so lax with how confusing it all was, with the lack of information that they all had, with the lack of information that, why am I blanking on his name? Not Ja Rule, but the other one. Billy McFarland was giving, and then how that one guy with the inappropriate section was willing to go that far. I'm so shocked that no one just like put their foot down and was like, this is not good. Like, I'm just shocked nobody, I mean, people try to kind of talk to him and we're like, I don't know, but in my head I just like cannot fathom how it got that far. And I know people in the video were like, we don't know how it got that far either, but I just like can't even, it's just so hard for me to even think that somebody could have let that go on for so long.
What else?
I thought it was a good idea. It was just very poorly executed. Like Fyre, it sounded like an amazing idea, but it just didn't execute very well.
What else?
I didn't actually remember like it happening. I mean, I briefly heard, but so I was watching it, brand new to it, and just like, this is kind of funny, it's kind of bad. And then as it went along, it snowballed. I'm like, this is a wreck. It just got continually worse. I don't know how it kept getting worse. Like in the beginning, I was like, oh, maybe they can save it. They still have the island, whatever. No, it was insane. I don't know. That's just my major takeaway. Beyond belief, yeah.
I know, just like watching, even though I knew what happened, it just stressed me out even to watch it. Just to see what they were going through and just like how they kept going, even though they knew it was gonna be awful. Like, it just stressed me out. Like, I couldn't even imagine having to deal with that.
How they talked about laughing, like when it rained.
Yeah.
You know how you get to that point where you've been studying like all night and you're at the brink and you get slap happy, where it's almost like your own psyche just kind of gives up and just embraces that there's nothing left to do but laugh, and that's really where they got to. Yeah.
I feel like if they would have given themselves more time, maybe it would have worked out, but they tried to do it within such a short period of time. It was just unrealistic.
I feel like the idea just like popped in their head, and the next day they were like, okay, we're doing it in 6 months. Like,
I don't understand why I didn't hear about it. Like, I follow all of those like models and stuff on Twitter, and I never saw any of those posts. Like, I never heard any advertisement for it. Like, I never saw a commercial before it, or like tickets go on sale or anything. Like, that's so weird. I never heard of any of it.
I heard the models might be getting in trouble too now, because they like advertised it and put it out there, so they might be getting in trouble for it.
That would set an interesting precedent, wouldn't it? That by being the spokesperson, that you are somehow now legally responsible for the delivery. Like, I mean, think about how many people were the spokespeople in advertisements, in commercials for the Super Bowl yesterday. Imagine if they actually were legally responsible for the product that they were just the spokesperson for. That would be,
Yeah.
I also think part of the reason some of us didn't hear about it, and sorry for making this assumption, I don't want to assume, but I'm assuming most of us are not like we don't have that $10,000 to spend on tickets, you know, and so.
But it was like trending on Twitter.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying, like,
And so I was like, I'm
It was
always
all
on
over
here,
like
like-
the news and social media.
Yeah.
I just wonder if it's like,
Or
I don't know, that was my initial thought, is like it probably just didn't reach me because like none of my friends would be reposting that. Like it might have been trending, but like even just like, I always see things from what my friends are posting, cause I don't post very much. So there's also that. And then another thing is with Bill McFarland, I don't know if anybody else felt this way, but did anybody else feel like he was just a little like sociopathic? Like his smile looked really fake, his facial expressions were so weird. I was like, why did nobody think that he was off? Cause he just looks a little off, right? Is that just me? I don't know.
and then he tried to make a comeback with more fraud. And with
Right.
I'm like, what are you doing?
I think that definitely shows that there's a disconnect in this person, right?
Well,
From
it's like part of me was kind of like still
I was
rooting for
rooting
him
for
a
him.
little bit, like where you're kind of like, okay, like.
Because I thought
he's a
Joel Rule
horrible
was like,
person,
Joel
but,
Rule was like, you know, just pounding
Joel
him.
was an idiot.
And so I was like, I kind of felt bad
okay,
for
wait,
him.
expand on that, because I'm interested in
How are
that
you about to
perspective.
invest with somebody that was pulling in $60,000 instead of millions of dollars? Like,
Uh-huh.
how
He falsified
the
the
hell did you
reports,
fall
that's
into
why.
that trap? Ja Rule, like,
I mean,
no respect.
I see where you're
sorry.
coming from, but Billy McFarland falsified all the reports and everything.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, I mean, he
that's-
lied, but
Yeah.
like.
And it's not like Ja Rule has like a degree in finance, right? Like,
Which is probably why he shouldn't have done
that's you know what, that's a big reason why you have to trust the people that you go into business with, right? So have you guys noticed, so Billy's in trouble, right?
Yeah.
Of course.
Billy
I
did
hope
not walk
so.
away scot-free, so 6 years in prison, 26 million, which that'll be interesting, he couldn't even pay his lawyers from the trial, but banned from being a corporate officer or director, which that was the part where it was like, phew, like, it doesn't mean that he's, I think so too. I don't think that would stop him, it just means that he can't own, right, a corporation, but Ja Rule is in no trouble.
How?
And that was really interesting to me.
How are the models
look
getting in
at-
trouble,
He
but
should
he's
be
not?
trouble.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking, yeah.
I would say he wouldn't be in trouble because they looked at him as more of an investor than
Mhm.
someone that was actually hands-on with it, I
When
guess.
you watch the video,
But he was
he put
basically
it.
like a
People would
partner
probably
with
get
Billy,
it. Yeah.
and everything that was happening, it was
Let's
like,
go to Pig Island, right?
Mhm.
They're like, why would we waste money on something that's not gonna be in the video? And he's like, let's do it, the models wanna do it.
Let's make a video on that. So.
Yeah.
Ja Rule was like the hype man, the spokesperson, the one that like really was the voice of it, and Billy was just like the money. So what I don't get is how if like the models are gonna get in trouble, maybe, we don't know, but like then why wouldn't Ja Rule, and like where was he for the final 30 minutes of that? They did not cover him
Yeah, he
at
was.
all. I was like, where'd this man go? Like he really got off like scot free.
He said,
Yeah, he really
he said, let me go back to the island and stay there.
Yeah.
Yeah, like once I actually started like building up to the event, like you didn't hear anything about him, like or
Yeah.
see him, or like he was only there for like the parties that they had, and then you didn't see him again.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that he's not in a hot seat at all right now, but
Was-
everybody else is.
Was he in the Hulu one?
So he's just right now. There are no criminal filings against him. There's no criminal charges being brought.
Okay.
But so it is just kind of interesting. I thought that was one of the things that I don't know. I kind of noticed too that it was just so strange.
It's such a shame, like the Fyre app that
Yeah,
they created.
yeah.
It was a really good idea.
Yeah.
It
that's
was,
true.
It's
And
a
if all
shame
those
that
people
they-
like lost their jobs, I was
Oh.
like, oh my
my
god.
God.
I was like, I got to the end. I feel so sorry for you right now.
The people that were working on the app that were kind of kept to themselves, not really understanding everything that was going
and
on
all
with
the
this.
debt that Billy left to the people with the app.
Yeah. Yeah, that was really, really tough. So from an events perspective, right? I mean, essentially what this was is that here's the other thing that I thought was interesting. This wasn't a group of people with experience in producing music events that came together and said, let's take our world to the next level. We have expertise to bring in, you know what I mean? We have all of this. This was a company that had created an app and was using an event to promote the app. It was never intended, right? It was always supposed to be something that was promoting the app. and then it just took off into something that was actually bigger than the app. But it looked like we got a lot of perspectives from event professionals. What did you guys think of some of the event professionals that sounded in? And between, if you watched both, you got to see a lot of event professionals that were on this event and involved. It wasn't like they didn't have anybody from our industry. What did you think of that?
They were trying to give their input and like no one was listening to them.
Yeah,
Just
like
what
with,
everyone
yeah, with the guy
Yeah.
who recommended that they need a lot of toilets, they fired him because they thought he was being
Yeah.
outrageous.
Yeah.
Because of, and because he was the one who was the most logistical, and and he was like, they were like, that we don't need you right now, and we don't need that kind of input, that the negative input, which was actually the reality. But I just feel like there were a lot of overconfident people who thought they knew what they were doing, but did not at all.
Yeah, I feel like the kind of blindness that a lot of the people had, that anytime anyone would say anything against it, they were gone. They were done with it. There was the guy that was putting out the advertisements for it, and he was like, I'm not putting out another one. And they're like, all right, well, here, give the information to these people. They're taking over your job. And no one spoke up, because if it was successful, it was going to be big, and they didn't want to lose out on that.
That's why a lot of them joined the Fyre thing in the first place, because they saw a big picture idea that could have been great, but it didn't happen that way.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe a lot of times with events, I feel like maybe the people who worked and who were willing to come in, they saw something really amazing that was going to happen. And for all we know, they might have worked for events before that seemed completely out of reach. Like, oh, I don't know. They've probably worked with events that took a lot and a lot of effort to put on, but they always worked out in the end. And while this was probably the biggest thing that the majority of them had maybe done, I feel like it's still that mindset of, well, almost every other event I've ever done has worked out in the end. Like, we've gotten through it. So maybe it was just that, okay, it will happen, because everything they've done previously probably did work fine.
One of the quotes was from one of the event professionals was, everything is chaos leading up to an event. It's always crazy, but somehow it comes together. I'm gonna, just so that you guys know from my career, I'm gonna disagree with that a little bit. I've never been at an event that was at that level of chaos and came together. Like, you have chaos in that one thing's going wrong. A speaker doesn't make their plane or comes down with the flu. But you don't have chaos when it comes to how am I going to provide people with proper places to go to the bathroom. Like, that's a level of chaos that I thought, okay, like, let's put this in context here. The level of chaos that they're talking about here, I don't think is normal by any stretch of the imagination.
It was exaggerated.
Yeah.
And then having to not being able to pay the employees that worked the event, that helped set up, all that stuff. They couldn't
I really
pay
thought
them.
someone was about to die. I was like,
Oh, that lady that
it's
worked
going
at
that way.
restaurant.
Yeah.
She
Yeah.
Like a lady
so
from the
sad.
restaurant.
She was
Yeah.
like, they really hurt me. They hurt me.
Yeah.
They took everything. I was like,
I know.
We're so heartbroken.
And then she took like a lot of her life savings.
Yeah,
and
she
just
took
tried
her
to
money
like
to pay those
pay
people back.
some workers.
Oh, yeah.
So have you guys seen that they raised over
GoFundMe, yeah.
the GoFundMe
Yeah.
raised like over $128,000 for her, and then which is more than she spends. Like,
And
they-
then they
we-
started a GoFundMe
the
for
public
employees.
has
Workers.
probably the non-rich public, all of us working people that care, contributed to help that poor woman, and they've also done a GoFundMe to help pay the laborers in the Bahamas to help kind of help them again. Yeah,
Do you know how much they raised for the workers?
not yet.
Their
I think it's
goal
still
is like,
going.
Their goal is like 400.
So they're trying to get that
Yeah.
money. Do you guys think that the Bahamas as a destination holds any fault whatsoever?
No,
Why?
because it's a thriving tourist destination. They have the resources, just not the proper logistics.
They were trying to fit too many people into that
Yeah.
little area. That was the main problem that I found. There's nothing wrong with the Bahamas. It is, like you said, a thriving tourist destination that would honestly be perfect for like a festival like that, where you can either take a cruise ship there, fly in,
But do you think that they owe a responsibility to people coming to the Bahamas as a destination? Like, think about the fact that in Indianapolis, we have to file for, if you wanted to do a music festival in downtown Indianapolis, you would have to file for permits. That's not something, you know what I mean?
Yeah, do the Bahamas need to hold a responsibility that, you know, they saw this was happening and they didn't do anything to stop it? They didn't think what repercussions could come from this. Do they hold a responsibility for not
didn't they end up
stopping it?
locking people?
Mm-hmm.
They ended up locking people in the airport, like the government did, right?
Mm-hmm.
Without food or water.
Yeah.
So
Yeah,
for
it
that,
is.
they definitely should take responsibility. I think the minute that it was no longer a private island, that's when there should have been some responsibility. Because I think you can make the argument, like when they had the private island and were filming the video, like, well, they bought it, whatever, it's theirs. But once it stopped being that, the government, I think, should have stepped in. And there should have been some sort of regulations, especially with the airport, like you mentioned. Like,
I don't
Also
think
with,
the
like,
island was registered to any. I think that was just like a private, unregistered island.
No, it belonged to Pablo
It's
Escobar's
Pablo
family.
Mm-hmm.
Also with like the customs, when problems started with the customs, I feel the government probably should have stepped in more and made a bigger impact and put it to a stop as soon
Wasn't
as.
it the government that held the water in customs?
Yeah, but then they were just like, oh, we'll be nice and like you can pay us back later. I mean,
Red flag.
Yeah.
Red flag for the local government is that they're having trouble paying for the water. So if they don't have water, right? I mean, that should send up a red flag. I thought about that if you wanted to do an event in Military Park, you have to submit to the city of Indianapolis your waste management plan. How are you gonna deal with people going to the bathroom? How are you gonna deal with garbage being picked up and taken, recycling? How are you going to deal with the closing of streets? You have to submit all of that stuff and it has to be reviewed by the police department. You have to pay permits. And so I thought that that was kind of a gaping hole for the Bahamas, that they owe a duty of care to their citizens and also people coming there to make sure that, you know, because they were contributing. So I thought that there was kind of maybe a destination lesson to be learned.
Yeah, I mean, how often does that island or the other island they were gonna be at, how often do those places have events like that?
Yeah, I was
So
gonna
I
say.
feel like the preparation from the government standpoint, you know, they didn't have any, I feel like they didn't know what to do.
It didn't have like all the resources, say, that we would have for an event like that. That
Why do you think they'd be willing to turn a blind eye? What was their motivation? This, yeah,
created
Jobs,
jobs.
media,
media.
attract people to the Bahamas. They're excited because if they pull this off, right?
Mhm.
Then look what it does for the Bahamas. Which I felt like that was kind of one of the underlying messages of all of this is if we pull it off. Everybody was willing to put everything on the line because if it just so happens to work. Yeah.
Yeah, Billy's confidence, I feel like, is a reason a lot of people kept turning blind eyes as well. I mean, he was an entrepreneur with this card thing, and he falsified the numbers, but the numbers people saw were the ones he falsified. So they were like, well, he already did this, and I mean, think of all the weird business schemes that are coming about, the weird things that people, you're like, what is that? Why are people buying it? But people are buying it. So if this is gonna be the next big thing, you know, I would want to be on it as soon as I can to be like, oh, I was one of the first people, give me a bigger piece of the pie. And I feel like just from the confidence Billy put out, people just got distracted by that.
His ability to hide the information as well as he did from those people was like, I mean, it was good, but like it was awful. Because of how his ability of him being able to hide all that information, keep everyone in the dark while still putting confidence in the people that he's having falsified this stuff.
What is it about this guy? I mean,
It's like,
I actually wrote that
show
down.
over them.
Like, what is it about this guy that can convince people to do things?
It almost reminds me, so I took a class, it was actually W131 in my high school, and we did a unit over the Stanford prison experiment and the guy who was in charge of that. And in terms, we talked a lot about leadership and having like one person in charge and why you can so blindly, like with the Nazis, not that this is anywhere near, but you know what I mean. But it's that blind leadership and you just follow someone. And when I was watching it, it almost reminded me of that. I was like, they are so blindly following this guy, listening to everything he's saying, even though it's so falsified. And I just think that it's that, there's a term for it, but that mindset where you'll just like zone in and you just like can't see anything else around it.
Groupthink.
Yeah.
Which is actually something that we as event planners have to be really careful of, because when you get large numbers of people in venues, there's some social psychology behind the way that people will behave, right? Like you will do something as a part of a group of 100 people that you would never do by yourself. It's just proven.
Yeah, the mob
right?
mentality type of.
Yes.
You know, and that's probably what
Definitely
happened to the people who were there too. They like went all mob.
Yeah.
But I definitely think it had to do, not with his, I mean confidence for sure, but I don't know. He like rubbed me the wrong way, probably because I knew what he was doing, but I definitely think it was that like, all right, this guy has a plan, he's confident, great, I'm just gonna follow him so I can get up there in the world.
They had so much money. So much money.
Yeah, and I was wondering, how did none of the investors research about this dude?
Right?
You, if you're just like willing to give him millions of dollars, a little bit of background research would not hurt you, like at all.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, you can, even if you falsify the main documents, they could, I'm pretty sure you can find out where someone's, falsifying big numbers like those.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't just Billy, it was the other guy too.
Ja
That- No, not Ja Rule, the other dude
Grant?
with the glasses.
Grant.
Yeah,
Yes.
Grant.
Yeah.
It wasn't just those two.
Yeah.
He was kind of like the
He was like the-
troublemaking weasel that was
Yeah.
always in
Yeah.
the background of every one of the pictures when something was going
Yeah.
bad.
Mhm.
Yes.
What was
Up
he
to
doing?
no good. Very strange. So one of the web students contributed, Peyton contributed that while watching it, that she couldn't believe how much Billy McFarland reminded her of Jordan Belfort. Do you guys know who Jordan Belfort is?
Yeah.
Wolf
I
of
could
Wall
s-
Street?
I can see that.
Totally.
This idea that you get a really magnanimous leader, somebody that has this charisma, this thing about them that causes people to kind of blindly follow, right? And do things that maybe they
That's a
wouldn't
perfect
do.
example.
Yeah, that's really,
Is Billy a genius?
I think
a little bit.
Yeah.
It's like one of those mad geniuses, you know, like,
I mean, he's a genius that got caught.
yeah, I feel like
Yeah.
he's genius in a sense that like none of us would ever take such big risks like that and do such crazy things, and it's almost like, you know, it's like he accessed another part of his brain, he was able to shut off this sort of like,
Conscience?
yeah, he was able to just like shut off his conscience, and I don't know if that makes you genius or if that makes you psycho, but I think it was a crazy combination of both, because he was able to just overlook everything and take on another step that no normal minded person ever would.
I mean, when Steve Jobs died and we started to see into his life, we found that he wasn't necessarily the human that we would all want to be best friends with, but he changed all of our lives, right? Like, so, I mean, that was, Jordan mentioned, but you know, even looking at, or Peyton mentioned looking at Jordan and Billy, that they were both entrepreneurial geniuses and really, like they had people skills that were just off the charts. Because they're able to convince people to do things, and they fully expect to get away with it, right?
Yeah,
Fully expect.
I feel like the risks that he suggests and takes are just so far out there. People are like, yeah, why not? Go ahead.
Because surely he couldn't be lying.
Yeah.
Who would lie about something this big?
Yeah.
Because you would think, you or I would think, if we lied about something like that, that we would get caught, which is why we wouldn't do it. In his mind, there was never a moment where he thought about not getting caught. I also thought it was really interesting that he created a leadership culture that was around being yes people. I only want people around me that are solution oriented. So that's something that you guys will actually hear. That's a really big kind of leadership buzzword right now is, especially in hospitality, we don't say no, we say, give me time and I'll get back to you. Because there's always a way, right? And I actually think that all of these hospitality professionals, that he kind of used one of our strengths, our willingness to find solutions, yes answers, kind of against some of these people. And that's why some of them maybe didn't see the red flags. When do you, did you have that moment watching where you felt like that's the moment that I would have gotten on the plane and left?
Yeah.
There's a lot of those. Like, there were so many times I feel like where it was just like, why are people still
I would have
not
left when we
listening?
changed location.
Even if I had the money.
The change of locations, that was the big uh-oh for you.
Seeing the tents, I would have
Yeah.
dipped.
The
Just
cheese
like, no
sandwich.
way.
The cheese sandwich.
Oh gosh.
Does anybody feel like you would have stayed? You would have tried to the nth degree?
If I was dumb enough to buy a ticket, then yeah, I would stay.
Once you're in, you're in.
YOLO.
Like food ran out, I would
Yeah.
have been pissed, but like, I would have stuck around.
Did you guys?
I mean, someone might have peed on my nachos, but like.
Did you guys see that one video, like that one like meme that's going around, and it was like Josh and in quotes random guy, and it was this random guy who got a ticket to Fyre Festival out of like some raffle at work, and his caption was something along the lines of like, I'm a middle class guy. It was like, this is chicken soup for the middle class soul, watching all of these rich people freak out because they haven't had water in 6 hours, and like they don't have anywhere to sleep and their mattresses are wet. And I just thought it was so funny because it just makes me think about like he stayed, and it was funny for him because he was middle class and like it was all these rich people freaking out.
After I got done with the Netflix one, I went over to YouTube and searched up Fyre Festival vlog, and I watched a handful of like YouTubers do their vlogs, and they said like towards the end, most of them were like, I mean, I definitely am stupid for buying a ticket, but they were like, the like adventure I got to go on within the last 24 hours was like probably one of the best experiences I've ever had. It was just so crazy, and everything was just so going so wrong. They were like, but I was with my best friends, not knowing where we were gonna sleep, where we were gonna stay, like how long we were gonna be in this airport. But most of them said that they had a really, really good time.
I mean,
Yeah,
I
just for the
think
experience.
since like you're with your best friends and you're also like, I mean, I know like obviously they're rich people, so it might have been a
Yeah,
little
because
hard.
they have a solution. They have a solution to everything. So,
If they were solution
Yeah,
oriented.
that black
just
card
catch them up
with
with
their
whatever
solution is.
Hey, you know what? They wanted to go to be infamous, and now everybody that did go kind of is a little bit infamous because of the fact that, I mean, at every, how long will it take before they're not standing around with people captivated listening to what happened to them at the Fyre Festival? I mean, you're right, you make a good point. They got a little bit of what they wanted out of it. Absolutely. So one of the moments that stuck out for me was the guy that taught himself how to fly a plane, which at first I'm just like, now you know you're in trouble when the guy that you learned to fly a plane on YouTube is running the plane for everyone. I'm like, oh my goodness.
Microsoft Flight Simulator.
But he was the only one that actually did the math on the square footage of the island and said, you've oversold the island.
When
It's
you said
That
that,
was
that's
the
when I
dude in
would
the
have been.
beginning.
Yeah, I was like,
That was the guy in the very beginning. It was like the European guy.
Yeah.
And his wife and him both, they set up a tent and they camped on the island because they wanted to get the user experience so that they understood what they were planning for.
It was unlivable.
And he said it was terrible. It was like there was mosquitoes, it was hot, it was awful. Like, this isn't gonna be any fun for anyone. That was one of those moments that reminded me why, when we're planning events, why we make sure that we go on site visits, right? We go and experience things before our attendees come so that we find the problems and we don't ask them to experience them, we experience them. We could pull the plug. As a good event planner, that's the plug pull right there. Is that even if we get them all here, and even if there are fancy sheets and nice villas and all of that, they're going to be utterly miserable and uncomfortable. This entire place is covered in mosquitoes. It's like,
That was the guy that brought up the toilet problem.
yeah. He also suggested the cruise ship off to the side of the island. Has anybody ever cruised before and gone to like where you go to one of their private islands? How do you get back and forth to like, Royal Caribbean's private island? Did you do that?
Yeah, they have like little boats that they bring to the boat and then take you, so you transfer from like a littler boat.
And was it good? Was it fun?
It's good, and you still kind of have your own room, but you're also in like a vacation setting as well.
I felt like watching that was their glimmer of hope. That was their one moment where somebody actually had a good enough idea that this might be okay. because he was just absolutely
And
too
like the
stuck to the idea.
biggest cruise ship, we learned this today actually in my hospitality class this morning. The biggest cruise ship can hold 6,000 people.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm.
Yeah, so that would have been, I mean,
That would
like,
be more than enough.
Well, and it has everything that you need there. I mean,
Exactly.
you still have to deal with human waste, though. You can't make people get on a shuttle boat back and forth to
Mhm.
go to the bathroom, especially when
Yeah.
they're drinking.
But
I
that
mean, you
would
still.
eliminate the need for tents and everything.
Exactly,
It would open up more
because
space.
the cruise ship basically has everything,
Mhm,
waste management, everything.
mhm.
did they have access, like, would they have to pay for the cruise ship, or did they?
Oh, they would have had to,
Oh.
yeah.
Okay, I didn't know if they had, like, if that came
cruise
with
ship
the
anyway,
island.
Yeah. I
For
thought they
like
were gonna get
not just celebrities. The celebrities were staying at houses, but so like step down was staying on the cruise ship, and the step down was staying in the tents.
Mhm.
So
Do you think that they brought the right people in? Like, did he bring the right people in? There was a lot. The AV, the Luca Sabatini, the guy that was the staging and production guy, he cracked me up because he said the time frame was short, but there was a chance. And I thought, who accepts a contract on? There's a chance,
I
right?
think
Um,
what-
any
I mean,
coordinator knows that's not a good idea. Let's go by chance. See what
The
happens
only
with this
problem
wedding.
was hiring everybody based on money. I will give you so and so, and why would
Mhm.
anybody deny like a big contract if there's a chance of it being doable?
mhm.
But I would, if I'm gonna invest in something that's never happened, I'm gonna need at least half my money up front.
Yeah, they were holding their final payments
Mhm.
kind of over their head.
And paying
What-
with cash, bags of cash, like that other guy said.
Mm-hmm.
Mhm. And I mean, I know that it was kind of some of the inappropriate content, but I have to tell you, sitting and watching an event professional after 30 years of an established career that was willing to do really unethical, awful things, a leader who is willing to ask those things, right? And it was just, I don't know how that didn't send just a wave into everybody that like we've gone off the rails. We've totally gone off the rails. When they talked about only getting 3 hours of sleep, I thought, okay, that's our world. That happens sometimes. You put that in for greatness. But yeah, I love the catering contract. Did anybody do the math on the catering contract? Talked about they started off with a $6 million contract and they dropped down to $1 million. With 6,000 attendees, that's $166 per person, which is why they ended up with the cheese sandwiches and all that. So I thought that one was pretty interesting. The one guy that went very unethical, he talked about maybe, if no one talks about the bad stuff at Woodstock. No one
That's true, but
talks.
Woodstock actually happened, and it was the greatest event of all time.
But there were bad things that happened.
Oh, yeah. Very bad thing.
It was wild because I had never heard about.
Yeah. Yeah, there were really bad.
Rain.
Oh, the Hell's Angel concert?
That was at Altamont.
Ooh.
So there were two festivals that kind of kicked off that summer of love and started, it started the wave of wanting to do this stuff because the publicity was that it was all positive and nothing bad happened. And then the group that did Altamont hired the Hells Angels as security. And that's described as the end of the summer of love. Like that was the crashing end point of like the hippie movement to an extent was because it went dark, right? Things got dark. But I thought that was kind of an interesting point of comparison that nothing bad ever happens at these events. Do bad things happen at Coachella, Burning Man?
I went to Lollapalooza this past summer, and the amount of people that I saw just like vomiting on the sidewalk or like passed out, and like so many people were in their little like emergency health section.
Mhm.
Like people get sick, people do stupid things, and
Yeah, I went
No
to
one talks
Lala
about
the past
that.
2 years too, and like
Yeah.
there's a lot of people who are always on like stretchers.
Yeah.
And, like a lot of people get really messed up.
I saw in Lounge last year, and like they had like ambulances coming into the festival because there were so many people pushing up against the fences that people were actually like getting like their like ribs cracked and stuff from being so like pressed up against during like mosh pits and stuff.
one of my friends, like 2 or 3 summers ago we went to Lala and we went and we saw G-Eazy.
Mhm.
And I was like, I'm not going up front because I was like 16 and I was like, I'm scared. And she like was up front and she had like a bruise right here because she had been pushed up so hard. And sorry if this is a little too graphic, but when I was at Lala, I saw a guy pass out and he sat on the concrete. And like, I don't know, it was awful. Like, it was so terrifying.
I mean, bad things happen at every concert.
Yeah. Like,
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
about to say,
So-
it's not like the
It's not, yeah.
concert, which
So
is.
do you feel like though maybe that is part of the reason why they stayed too long though? Is that there's this understanding that there's always gonna be some wild things that happen at a concert. There's always gonna be some things that go bad. But as long as it's just not, as long as the bands are performing, yeah.
I don't even hear them mention security once when they were planning the event either.
It bothered me how little they talked about toilets.
Yeah.
I have to tell you that, like, I know that it's not the sexiest part of our job to think about portable toilets, but with events like this, especially when you have people that have been drinking and all of that, like, having access to sanitary conditions to keep things from getting too out of, I mean, it's just absolutely critical. Water and bathrooms. Like, if you do nothing else, water and bathrooms. And so it just shocked me because that spot that they moved it to, that was like the building development, that was, had like, you know, this, I remember looking at that, yeah, it looked like a quarry to me. They also didn't talk about fencing.
People could have fallen.
Literally fallen in.
Oh, do you notice that too?
And it's crazy because like, yeah, bad things happen at concerts, like the vomiting and stuff like that is pretty normal, but not having anywhere for people to like go to the bathroom, like I've never heard of that happening at concerts and things like that. And so the problems they had, like feeding people, bathroom, like sure, like you could be like, oh, well, bad things might happen because we don't have security, but that happens a lot. But I just don't see how people were able to look past the extremes,
Yeah.
which were those, the bathrooms and food, water.
How much time do you think, so, I mean, when they said 6 weeks, I mean, my jaw hit the floor. I mean, I remember thinking, I've seen business meetings that I couldn't pull together in 6 weeks.
It probably takes you 6 weeks just to get funding for a festival.
Yeah, like I think
If the planning timeline was long enough,
I think it would have.
do you think it's possible? Do you think
Yeah.
it's the best
Yeah.
idea ever, just
Yeah.
poorly executed?
Yeah. The time was, I think, the worst part
Oh,
of
yeah.
that. And
How-
also the people that were running it.
How much time do you guys think? How much time do you think that you would need to put something
A
together?
year.
Yeah, a year to 2
Like,
years.
I don't know if
Yeah.
you know, like Ultra Music Festival, Miami. They start booking their tickets a year in advance, and even Tomorrowland in Belgium, they have everything set up like from 9 months before the before the festival happens, which is I think it's critical to, you know, to have that kind of a timeline to see every worst case situation.
And I mean, like, thinking like wedding planning, like you have to start planning like at least a year out for weddings, and that's not even like a festival. That's just like a place of like
No.
150 to 300 people.
And
so
you're not even thinking about toilets,
right,
right? And you need that much time, right?
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I mean, you're taking a detailed dive with that, but at the same time, when you're dealing with a luxury experience, you are taking a really detailed dive. I mean, think about how much time it takes to put on, like, the Indy 500. Some of the glamping stuff that they have started to offer at the Indy 500 and some of the high-end clientele that are out there and not happy with the mud and some of that. You also have just dealing with those expectations.
Right, like you have to look at like it as like a full kind of experience. You have to think about like it's not about what you want, it's about what like the guests want, and it's about what the bride and groom want or the mother-in-law wants or whatever. But like,
Is the Pablo Escobar Island doable? I mean, regardless of Pablo Escobar's legal team and all of that stuff, is it remote island that literally has no, I mean, it did have an airplane landing strip, right? That was one thing it had going for it. But I mean, it doesn't have like a plumbing infrastructure
Like, no
around the
running
island.
Water, no electricity.
Is it really possible to do it there and be able to charge enough that you think you could make a profit on it?
Not for that clientele.
No.
They don't expect porta potties.
Right.
Just saying.
That's one of the things that I wondered too was is
I would be fine if there were porta potties. Like I camp a lot,
if you're paying like $10,000 for a ticket,
Yeah,
you
you
don't
don't
like
like
a
support
porta potty.
potties, right?
But the problem is that you have to charge about $10,000 a ticket to be with the number of people that the island will hold, to be able to turn a profit on the amount of infrastructure you have to build, at least in year one. Now, if you were gonna do this event every year for multiple years, and the infrastructure that you put in, you could take some time to get some return on that investment, maybe so. What do you guys think about the attendees? Is any of the fault on them at all?
Yes.
Why?
Dumbasses paid and win.
But Kylie Jenner said it's gonna be the party of a lifetime.
So?
Well,
That's-
she's an audience too, right? She's an audience with money.
Okay, totally
She was
fair.
a
She will buy into
micro-influencer.
anything that's sold to her, which is, hyped.
She's a micro influencer.
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like when they like take pictures of those like sugar bear hair vitamins, and it's like, okay, but do they actually work? And like, does she even know if they work? And is she even taking them? Like, probably not. She just wants to do that for some money. And I feel like if you're not going to be intelligent enough to really like think about that, I mean, those are like maybe $25 vitamins. But if she's advertising something that's $10,000, wouldn't you want to look into it and like make sure? I don't know. So I think some of it's on them.
Yeah, Kendall Jenner was.
I mean, they didn't even know where they were going when their plane landed. So it's like,
Right,
how
and
can
they
you
weren't
plan
even-
a trip and
And
not
they weren't
know
even
that
like
stuff?
updating their social media either. They kept posting the same pictures from like the trailer and like when the models were there. They weren't
Yeah.
updating their social media either. I'm like, how
And
could
it
you
was like no
not think
pictures
that's
of the
weird?
site either, like where they were gonna be, and I was like,
Right.
honestly, y'all.
On the
what are you
Netflix
doing?
one, how people were asking questions and they just kept saying contact
Yeah.
concierge.
Yeah.
Deleting
Yep.
comments?
There's
Yeah, that's like red
deleting
flag.
comments. That
Red
was
flag.
that was.
Yeah, they were deleting, and then
Any
the
negative
concierge was just like a 10-foot table with a piece of paper saying, hello.
Anybody,
concierge."
is anybody planning a vacation right now? Anybody planning a vacation? Where are you going?
Florida,
When?
spring break.
Nice. Okay, what have you done to get ready?
Booked the Airbnb,
Uh-huh.
saved money, figured out a car,
Uh-huh.
figured out food, like
Mhm.
how much money it would take for food. That's
Who else
about
going
it.
with you? Friends?
Yeah.
Okay, you've orchestrated stuff with friends. Have you put in for time off work?
Yeah, I'm unemployed.
Must be nice.
So
I told my mom.
did you
that
have to make
counts.
sure that like rooms were nearby each other? Like, does everybody know what hotel you're staying at?
Yeah.
So
I mean, it's a house. You send the address. Show up.
$1,000 minimum just for, and I thought this, Catherine from the online class, she put this, they've got $1,000 GA pass here, which is not what they sold most of. They sold a lot of these high-end packages that were much more, and then started asking people to put $10,000 on bracelets.
Yeah, they had
Right?
like different levels of bracelets on top of the general admission.
And she was saying here, there was no investigation. Like, they did no investigation at all.
Did they even explain what the wristband was?
Yeah, like is it a Disney like
Is it a
wristband?
fast
Where
pass?
you're like, hey,
Is this
like,
like
what's
an
up?
instant
It wasn't
hit pass?
it was an RFID. So
Mhm.
you fill it up and then it just scans you like your car has an RFID every time you go through the toll.
Uh-huh.
So they
That's
charge
how
you.
you pay for
Yeah.
stuff? Okay.
Not having money have to exchange hands in an event like this
It's
is
like
not
a
a bad
cool-
idea. It's
That's
just, I
how
think
most
the
of it-
problem is
yeah.
like the guy said, they didn't have the Wi-Fi to support this.
Yeah.
So then what do you do when the Wi-Fi is down? You can't scan anything and people want drinks. Now you end up in a really difficult situation. What?
I just did which card?
Bunch cards.
Bunch
Yeah.
cards.
Yeah, you end up, and that's the thing is that everything takes infrastructure, right? Everything takes stuff in place that's tested where there's backup plans and all of that. But I thought that was interesting, all this money that they spent, and I'm going on a 4-day trip to Boston, and I already have a Pinterest board. Right? Like, I mean, I put so much thought into any time that I'm leaving, making sure that I've got everything kind of thought through. And yeah, they didn't really put any investigation into it. So you think that some of this, the onus was on them? What do you think about the fact that people thought it was funny? I mean, a lot of the world sat back and thought,
thought
you
it was
know,
funny
rich kid
because
problems
everybody
is the
else-
hashtag,
Right,
right?
Yeah.
They were making
But some of
memes.
those people did not look like they like had all the money in the world. And I was like, I mean, yeah, the rich kid problems is kind of true, but I was like, some of these people look like they
Saved up.
saved the money to come to
Yeah.
something
That's
that they
true.
thought was gonna
That
happen.
too,
That's
that
so
too.
much to save. Like, I can't even save $2. Like, if you're rich, like, you're rich. You can afford something for $10,000. If you're gonna save for a ticket,
Yeah,
it's probably
take-
gonna be $800.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
Then you also gotta take into the fact that, like, how you dress shouldn't define how you're rich. Like, look at Steve Jobs. He wore New Balances and mom jeans to everything he did.
That's totally fair. Okay, we're gonna get a little philosophical here to kind of close it out. What do you feel like the fact that this entire thing happened? So you have attendees that hold some blame, right? They probably should have known better. There's a whole bunch of event professionals that should have known better, that I really feel the worst for them because I don't know how this doesn't follow you in your career. Like, would you ever want to hire one of these people?
No.
I wouldn't either, because you've shown me that you don't have the ability to make the right call in the tough moment, which is what we're supposed to be good at, knowing how to do. But you've got event professionals that should have known better, investors. We've agreed that the Bahamas, they have to take some onus here, that they didn't take care of the public, right? So you've got all the social media influencers, the models, all of that. So what do you think is the overarching, like, cultural thing underneath all of this? Why were all of these people willing to do all of these things that now in hindsight seem, I mean, this is more than Monday morning quarterback, right? This is like, it seems, this is really blatant.
And it just all goes back to money and fame. The people who went wanted to post it on their social media and they wanted to feel infamous, like you talked about, and they wanted to feel special and important because that's what Billy wanted to feel as well. And then the people who were involved in it just wanted the money. I mean, you know that people signed those contracts because they saw the price attached to it. And they were like, I would make so much money, I would become so popular, everyone would want to hire me. Even if it's not fame in sense of like social media and movies, like fame in your own career sector, like for sure. I just think it comes, and for the Bahamas, it was all about, you know, tourism and media for their industry. Just like you go back to every single person who was involved, and it's all money, fame, publicity, media, which is like all life is now.
What else?
I feel like a lot of it was making like connections to other people and like kind of like interacting with different groups to make like, cause like a lot of people that bought tickets were like, I'm gonna talk to famous people, maybe become friends with them. And then I'm like, Billy was hiring all these people to get like other people to like in the future either be on the app he was developing or like promote it. So a lot of they're trying to just interact with each other and make connections in business and stuff like that.
normally to, like, party like a rock star, get a little party with rock stars, you have to, like, be somebody. Like, you have to be a VIP. But to attend this event, all you needed was $10,000. So you didn't have to be somebody. You just had to have dress on. Or, like, so I think people were, like, obsessed with the fact, like, oh, we're going to be VIPs. We're going to be partying with these people that freaking matter. Like, and then we're going to matter. And it's just a very, like, airhead, entitlement way of thinking. Like, very toxic.
I think it was on the same train as Coachella. Why people go to Coachella is a higher end music festival, and they thought that this would be on, you know, just one level higher than Coachella. And
That's what I was thinking too, yeah. They were trying to kind of be like Coachella with the celebrities and yeah.
Celebrities everywhere.
Yeah.
That's how they tried to advertise it.
Yeah.
And then I also think, going back to what I said at the very beginning, it was a really good idea. If everyone fell in love with the idea. Like, did you see the lineup that they had for Fyre Festival? It was really good.
I was surprised as an old lady that Blink 182 coming back would be a cool thing, but okay, all right. I was young when they came around the first time, so I was like, okay.
But yeah, like all the stuff that was included with the Fyre Festival just piqued people's interest and made them want, and they just fell in love with the concept and the idea of something that could have been great that didn't turn out that way.
If it had gone if it had gone and it would have been 50% of what they promised, if they could have just delivered on 50%, would it have been a success?
Yes.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think if it would have just happened, it would have
Happened,
been a
yeah.
success.
It would have been like the Woodstock where
It
people
would have gotten
pleasantly
lower.
let go of the hard parts.
Yeah.
I mean that all of the bad. People are willing to let go of all of that as long as you give them that Instagram moment. As long as they got the one picture
Yeah.
that's shareable,
Yeah.
they'll forgive everything else.
Celebrities
Yeah.
and Instagram. And you're sad.
Okay, so what does this mean for us?
Fire Festival 2.0.
1.5.
TESM plan, you're like 404 project.
Let's start planning today.
We're gonna schedule it for spring break.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah, we got 30 days, 33 days, y'all. Let's go.
33 days.
Oh my god.
Do we owe our attendees honesty in the way that we promote our events?
Yes, definitely.
Yeah.
Total transparency.
No falsifying.
Promotion is the only way that you can get attendees, really.
But what about the fact that sometimes if you don't promote hype, then hype won't come in the first place? What about sometimes you have to say it's gonna be there before it actually is there? Is that hard?
Yeah.
I think that's hard, right?
Yeah.
They didn't have an example of it because it hadn't happened before. So all they could do was promote what they wanted it to be.
Mhm.
And they had it.
Cruise
They,
combined with an island getaway, combined with like concert, like it was just like
Yeah.
it was ridiculous.
It's like when you're a kid and you're sitting there and you're like saying, what if we did this and then we did this? Like, did you ever have that moment as a kid where you're like, let's make a pizza and we'll put this on it and this on it and this on it and you put it, yeah, and then you taste it and you're like, that's terrible. They went, sometimes it doesn't have to be everything great all at once. Maybe just having a piece.
That's how we got Tide Pods on top of pizza. Did you not see that picture? Like someone could just put Tide Pods on top of pizza and like put it in the oven.
No, we can't talk about that.
Just
I'm already diving down one rabbit hole with the university right now.
I think if they did like to promote it like even more, like if they wanted to do it like another year, I think like doing like one really cool thing like per year would be better instead of having it all like there.
Yeah, you know what? Coachella started out with cheap beer and hot dogs.
yeah. Like
Right?
every music festival has like
Right.
started with like 500 or 1,000 attendees and thrown.
They talked about that in Hulu. It started off with cheap beer and hot dogs. And they grew it. It just shows you that, like,
Yeah.
I mean, I think that he was trying to do something a little bit different here, but
They're trying to do too much too fast.
They're just giving, going 0 to 1.
Or if it did,
Yeah.
if it did happen, like they can work on all the stuff that they could, like they could perfect on certain stuff.
yeah.
They had the option to call off the event before people started to fly in, but
Yeah.
they
That's-
still like let's just see what happens.
And wasn't only 1/3 of the people there?
Yeah.
And
it was already a
yeah.
show.
I love that they just took him someplace and tried to get him drunk
Get
so
him
that
drunk.
maybe they
Yeah.
wouldn't notice.
Right.
It's
Like,
like,
let's just warm tequila
Yeah.
while they're waiting in line. Like,
Yeah.
it'll be fine.
okay, so we owe some honesty in the way that we promote our events, but sometimes there is a gray area there. Okay, what else as event planners? What else was the big takeaway for you?
I think that when as event planners dealing with like other people, like at Live Nation, we have like our operations people, our maintenance people, and all that. I think there has to be a level of communication between everybody, like on top. Like looking at Fyre Festival, Billy was the one who controlled the numbers. Billy knew all the numbers. When Ja Rule asked, when anybody asked, he said, "Oh, it's fine. Don't worry about it. I've got it all under control." And I think that as event planners, we just need to make sure that we're looking at everything equally, and everyone needs to be on the same page. Like not accepting, "Oh, it's fine. I'm gonna take care of it." Like we need to see the real thing.
I think it's also important to like plan out like the time frame that you'll need for this. So like give yourself 2 years at least, and then take all of like the scenarios into account. So like what happens if this happens, or what happens if this goes wrong? Like we have a backup plan for this, or what happens if like a speaker doesn't show up? Like as you said, like is there a backup plan for that? So I think they needed to take all of that into account instead of just going for it.
know who you're working for too. Because a lot of us might go off and own our own companies and you'll work for yourself, but then a lot of us are gonna go off and work for other people. And so just like know who you're gonna work with and know what their event is, you know?
I will promise you that in probably sometime in the first 5 to 10 years of your career, you will have an unethical situation present itself. Hopefully it'll be something like, you know, you caught your fun colleague stealing supplies out of the work closet. Hopefully it's something that's that simple.
Yeah.
But when we get to the ethics lecture in this class, I'll share with you guys in the first 5 years of my career some of the unethical things that I was presented with, where it was people in positions of power, and I didn't feel like I could do anything about it. I didn't feel like I was in a position to, you know. And so it is funny how I never participated in anything unethical. It never got me to that point, but I did see things happen, and it's not like I stormed out and took the company fish and said, who's coming with me, right? Like, I wasn't Jerry Maguire. I didn't stand that kind of a ground. I stood back and watched that it happened. And so it is interesting sometimes when you get in these situations where there's people that are very powerful that you're nervous about, or you're afraid to be the one person that walked out and then it happened and you're the one person that like misses out. That FOMO, man, FOMO got all of them. But I love your point too. April from the web class mentioned there has to be a checks and balances, right? There has to be some type of checks and balances because and Live Nation's a perfect example of this. You guys work with the local police department, meteorologists, like there is a concerted effort between the venue and local municipality departments to ensure that a level of care is provided to the citizens and the people that are frequenting the concerts. I remember asking Andrew one time, how do you guys call a concert when the rain comes? He was like, well, I don't just go out back and like that's how it works. He's like, I work with the police department and with a local meteorologist, and we're watching things as they come in, and there is a group that makes a knowledgeable decision together. It is never on one person because one person doesn't have the expertise alone. So I think that that's a really good point, really good takeaway. All right. Anything else? If they do it again, and you could afford it, would you go?
I think I would like to
If
plan
there's
it
someone
out.
else.
Someone said yes. I'm telling you this. I think. Would you go?
If I could afford it, and like not in the sense that I'm rich enough to afford it, but like
Yeah.
I'm still this middle class and I can afford it, then yeah, I go.
You would
I
go.
think I would want to
$1
plan it.
million when it presented
If I win the
itself.
lottery, maybe.
Sure,
If I win-
just throw it out there.
Yeah, if
Would
I win-
you-
if I win the lottery, maybe.
Could they hire you to be on the event team for the next one if they promised you it would be different?
Oh,
They
yeah.
pay me.
No.
Yeah, that's where I am. I think I would be more willing to go on the adventure than ever have my professional name attached to it.
Right.
Yeah.
Pay me
Okay.
under the
My
table.
question is, how did he go through all this Fyre Festival and then start scamming people
Yeah.
again?
That was hilarious.
I was
I
like,
know.
I know.
Hilarious.
He was telling us
I went and
that
checked my
house.
email. I was like, am I
VIP.
getting these same emails from him? Like,
He was trying to sell
Crazier.
VIP tickets to concert or
That-
to
that
festivals that
Yeah.
hadn't been released.
stuff that wasn't even like
His
on
lawyer,
sale.
his lawyer in the court case did try to say that he had mental afflictions. I'm just gonna leave it at that. But I think that if anything, I almost wondered when they talked about that and he was trying to make a case for being crazy.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That.
Because it just didn't make sense.
You can't be mentally insane and commit
So I can
fraud.
rob a bank and just be like,
I mean, me. There has to be a little part of you that's a little insane to have the courage to commit fraud.
Well, I mean, yeah, but you can't like
I mean,
you can't like
I can see
blame
that.
it on.
As one you
Right,
say
you
fraud.
can't even blame it on that, no, but like, a part of you has to be like,
And to do
I
it
mean-
multiple times.
Mentally insane should be determined between someone that's like mentally insane should like Ted Bundy is considered mentally insane. Billy McFarland was just
I know, but
a
there's-
fraudulent
But did he
businessman.
reach a point that he realized he was in too deep early on, that he was just like, anything goes now?
Yeah.
Like, is there a point early on where it's not that he's like insane or whatever, a chronic liar, he's like, I have to get this done no matter the cost?
I'm up the creek now.
You took YOLO literally.
Yeah, that's a good point though. If he knows, if he's looking at things and he's like, I'm already going to jail. So at this point, let's throw everything at it
Yeah.
because it's maybe the best chance I've got.
I'm already all in.
Maybe
I like at one point in the video, he's like out there trying to talk to the people that are not.
Yeah, he's up on like
On the table.
Yeah, everybody.
She said, you look like an authority figure I want to listen to. Like, no.
Even though
That's
I'm
something in
the
the
main
Hulu
person
one,
of this fire.
They were trying to like
listen
assign
me.
people tents, and then he just got up on the table and was like, "Hey, everybody, go find a tent." You're on your
Yeah.
own."
One of the dudes said it turned into like
Yeah.
Mad Max.
You saw
Yeah.
somebody just like running with the whole thing of toilet paper, like.
There was a-
oh yeah.
Like,
That
he
was
said, he said one lady like got a whole pallet of toilet paper and was keeping it random or like what?
Now that's an entrepreneur. She's like, I see an angle here.
I'll trade you a case. I'll trade you a case of this.
Yeah.
Angel software.
Okay, so I will say I'm gonna try to kind of plug this in throughout the semester. There's definitely a lot when it comes to site selection, picking a venue. Think about how if they would have just picked a different location, this all could have gone
I
different.
don't think location was the problem. Well,
I
you know, it was the amount of people that they had.
Yeah,
It was the amount of people.
And the lack of running water and the lack of
I'm
sanitation.
talking from when they realized they should move from the island to.
For sure, but
Mass
still,
population
what you will learn though is that if you do a wedding at the Scottish Rite downtown, where they have a kitchen in-house, they have all of those things that the caterer has access to, it's gonna be a lot cheaper than if you go to the top of a mountain and try to host a wedding, because now we've gotta bring the food all the way up there.
And now
The
you just get
bathrooms,
seated.
all the way up there. And so when you pick really remote locations, are they really cool? Yeah, it's cool, it sounds really sexy, but the cost just amplifies massively because you have to there's nothing there to tap into. And so as event planners, sometimes we have to make compromises on our sites that we pick. You want the site that's realistic, and how can you get that? How can you get the beachy feel without maybe going to Pablo Escobar's island, right? So we'll continue to talk about some of this as we kind of go through the semester, especially to us as we kind of talk about some of the legal stuff as well. The one thing I think is that they are incredibly fortunate that no one got hurt.
Mm-hmm.
If anyone had died or if anybody had gotten hurt, they would have been negligible. And this would be a much different type of lawsuit because I don't think they could have gotten out of negligence on
Then
this.
Jaw would have been in jail.
I think I actually agree with that. So,
What's he up to? I'm so curious.
I know. Any other
He's doing
things
it.
to contribute?